on Daf Mem Zayin Amid Aleph. In the art scroll, it's 47A, Amid 47A2. Okay? So, we're going to try to get to the Mishnah on Memches, which will put us on today's daf, right? Today's daf was Memches. Right, very good.
No,
So, no, tomorrow's Memches. Yeah, so, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Oimrim Zaman B'Shmini Shel Chag. We say Shechiyanu on the 8th day of the Yom Tov Shmini. It says, Abel, the Ein Oimrim Zaman B'Shvi Shel Pesach. We do not say Shechiyanu on the 7th day of Pesach. Why? Because at Shmini Atzeres is kosher alai pridaschem, is a special Yom Tov. Sukkot ends. Hashem says there was so much simchas, achsameir, so much joy as we're about to discuss, and therefore I'm making a special Yom Tov, a private party. Exactly, a private party. Atzeres, I don't want to kosher alai pridaschem. It's hard for me to leave. Kosher, my leaving is very hard, and so I make on the 8th day of, on the last day, the 8th day of Sukkot, i.e. Shmini Atzeres, it gets its own Shechiyanu. Pesach, which is only an extension of the overall Pesach Yom Tov, it just happens to be the last day, does not get a Shechiyanu. Says like this, Sharei Choluk B'Shloisha Devarim, because you could see that the 7 days of Shavuos and Shmini Atzeres have three different things. The Sukka, the Lulav, the Nisuch HaMayim. On Sukkot, there's a Sukkah. There was the taking of the Arba Aminim, the Lulav, and Nisuch HaMayim, the pouring out of the water, right? Which all year long we did Nisuch HaYayin, the pouring of wine together with the Karban Tamid. Here we do Nisuch HaMayim, which we'll talk about again.
He was
Baboker Ba'erev, yes. Yeah. And the Chatziahin. Chatziahin and the other part. It's only on Sukkot. Okay, Sukkah V'Lulav Nisuch HaMayim. Well, Rabbi Yehuda di Omar, remember the Zera Kodesh word that you did Tashlich and now you want it back because you did such a good tshuva. Right. Well, Rabbi, that's a word to say at the Sukkah. Well, Rabbi Yehuda di Omar. Now, we hold the Pashtut that the Nisuch HaMayim is like the Nisuch HaYayin. Just like the pouring of the wine required Sholosh Lugin, 3 Lugin, okay? So too, does the Nisuch HaMayim require 3 Lugin? Right? It's a quarter of a hin is 3 Lugin. Rabbi Yehuda di Amar, Rabbi Yehuda says, they would only pour a 1 log of mayim, of water on Sukkot, and you'll notice what he says, kol shemoina, all 8 days. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you did even Nisuch HaMayim, even on Shmini Atzeres. So according to him, therefore there's only a difference between Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres. 2 things, that you don't have to sit in a sukkah, and you don't have the dalad minim, you don't have lulav esek adas ve'arov. If that's the case, shvi shel pesach nami, I should have to make a shechiyanu harei chiluk b'achilas matzah, because there's a huge difference between the eating matzah on the 7th and 7th day of Pesach and eating it on the 1st day of Pesach. The first night of Pesach is a choy. Mikav ve'elech rishus. From then on, it's a rishus. Why it is a choy? Because it says be'erev toichlu matzahs. In the evening, you shall eat matzahs. Since it says be'erev toichlu matzahs, that means even if there's no korban Pesach, you still have a chiyuv to eat matzah in and of itself. Masha enke, the rest of Pesach, zok the gra, it's only a kiyum mitzvah. If you do eat matzah, you get a mitzvah, but there's no chiyuv d'oraisa. There's a kiyum mitzvah d'oraisa. You get, if you eat a matzah, says the gra, you do get a mitzvah d'oraisa. That's not the rabbanon, it's d'oraisa, right?
So that means Shvi Shel Pesach You eat a meal, right?
That's correct.
So you could eat a meal
With
without,
Paris.
you're not
Paris. If you don't watch, there's no chiyuv. The truth is, outside of the first night of Pesach, there's no chiyuv to eat. The question is, because we have a hekesh between Tesvav, Pesach to Sukkot, and Sukkot, it's also just like
a young kid, and you don't watch.
so. Therein lies the question. The real question becomes, because the question is really much deeper than that. I don't want to get into it. The first night of Pesach is a din of be'erev toichlu matzahs. The first night you shall eat matzahs. What kind of matzah do we eat the first night? Besides shmura, lechem oni, poor man's bread. Yeah. What about matzah ashira? The truth is, you're allowed to eat matzah ashira the rest of Pesach. So, no problem. I'm saying you can watch it. Matzah ashira, it's not a question. I spoke about this once. That's why I don't think I'm such a genius here. I spoke about it once in Semiyai. So matzah ashira is a different thing.
So
you can wash the matzah ashira. That's a huge nafkamina in the thing. So that's a whole nother conversation. But it goes.
But it should be mentioned.
So
I was wondering. So Shvi Shal Pesach, you're not going to watch?
I thought you were going to ask you a better question. Shvi Shal Pesach is not a yontif on itself. That's the day of Kriyas Yamsuf. You remember? We used to say Yossi out loud. That's what I'm saying. Just hold that question. And not that the Gemara is going to tackle it. It's not, but it's an interesting thing to note. And I'm going to make a point to it. It goes to a Ramban at the end of Parshas Emor. Hochi hashno. With regard to the seventh day of Pesach, although it's different than the first night of Pesach, which is a choiv, which you must eat matzah, it's not different than any other thing else. From the first day of Pesach, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, seventh day, there's no nafkamina, right? You want to eat matzah? Fine. You don't want to eat matzah? Fine. Here, Shmini Atzeres is different than even the first day. It's different than even the first day because there's no chiyuv Sukka. Ravina Amar Zechiluk Shemalefanov. This eighth day is different. Is immediately different than the day before. That means on Hoshana Rabbah you had to eat in the Sukkah. On Shmini Atzeres you don't eat in the Sukkah. Hoshana Rabbah you have to take the lulav and esrog. Shmini you don't. The seventh day of Pesach is completely different from the days prior, i.e. the first day, right? The first day you must eat. The second days and onwards, you don't. Completely different. Again, I don't want to get into this. There's much pilpul to which to talk on this. We can go into it if you wanted to separate out of Sukkot and try to understand what's really going on by Pesach. It's a much more difficult question. It's a big question because we don't have a Korban Pesach today, or in fact, do we really have a Korban Pesach today? And you're allowed to shech the Korban Pesach today, but the Arabs, the Ishmaelim, don't allow us. And that's what the Chassam Sofer says. That you could read the Korban Pesach today, right? Because Tumas Chutra B'tzibur. So it's only that the Arabs don't allow us, right? It's a whole long shmis and bichlal about matzah and the whole thing. Okay, but let's leave that alone. Rav Papa says, par. Here on the eighth day on Shmini Atzeres, how many animals do you bring? One bull. Hasam Kesiv parim. In fact, you brought 70 kabanot, 72 kabanot on 70 connected the 70 nations of the world. What do you call it? You brought 70 questions. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Rav Nachman Omar, Yitzchak Omar, Hocha Kesiv Bayoim. At the end of Parshas Minchas, my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, it says Bayoim Hashmini Atzeres Tielochem. Hasam Kesiv, and before them it says Uvayoim Hasheni, Uvayoim Hashlishi, and so on. Rav Ashi Omar, Hocha Kesiv Kimishpat. But we're on 47.8.3. Hasam Ksiv Kimishpatam. If you remember how we lane on Sukkot, everybody's paying attention. Unisacheha, Viniska, Kimishpatam, and all that. And it comes out to it spells out the word mayim as in nisuch hamayim. It also has gematrias that in the Ma'or Shamish, the great Hasidic should say for the Ma'or Shamish goes through and breaks out, says it's a comparative of the words, how many days are from Tisha B'Av till Elul till Rosh Hashanah. Is like I forgot what he counts it up. It's the same amount of days. He has a whole cheshbon having to do with the thing. Anyways, Lema Messiah Loi. Maybe we could bring a proof from this brisa. Porim Elam v'Kabosim Akrim Zezeh. On Sukkis, the Porim, the bulls, the rams, the sheep are all affect one with the other. If you're missing one of the pair, fafuched, you got to bring new kabbanas. But Rabbi Yehuda Porim Eina Ma'akvin Zezeh. In fact, the bulls are not essential one to the other. Sharei Mismayit V'Holchin. From the very fact that every day you're going from 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, or you're counting down. Okay? So Amrullah, he said the Rabbana, but do not all of them, not just the bulls, the par, but the rams and the sheep all get diminished on the 8th day. Amalehen, he said that's not a diminishment. Why? Because Shmini regel b'pnei atzmayu. Shmini is a yomtiv onto itself. It's its own thing.
Continuation. It should have said not parech.
Not parim.
No, it should have been the 6.
There should have been 6. Therefore, Shmini regel b'pnei atzmayu. Kishem sheshvias yimei echad tu'unin korban shir b'shbocha b'lino. Just as the 7 days of the Sukkot require each their own kabbanis, their own song, their own brachas, and you're not allowed to quickly leave Yerushalayim. You have to stay overnight. You have to show that you have a love for the Beis Hamikdash and Yerushalayim, and you have to tarry overnight. Shemi turn carbon needs to come for shear. Its shear is laminatzech the sheminis. Lamin is right. The right laminatzech al sheminis liosam because of the 8th day. Laminatzech the sheminis liosam. Right. Tosfos says it. Right. Abshabi b'shir ulabracha ulalina. You're not supposed to run out of town. Hang about. We are now on Amid Beis. Mem Zayin Amid Beis. My love. Now the Gemara says Zaman. What are we talking about? What bracha does Rabbi Yehuda refer to? He must be talking about Zaman, Shechianu. Loi says Gemara, no Shechianu. We could be talking about Birchas Hamazon Tefillah that you say Shmini Atzeres Chag Hazeh. L'hachanami Mistabro. The Isa Kedat of Zaman that it's talking about Shechianu. Zaman called Shiva Miyika. Is there a bracha of Shechianu all 7 days? Haloi Kasha. The Eloi Birchadina, that if you didn't make the bracha of Shechianu the first day, you could be mashlim, you could do a tashlumin. That what? Mevarach lamacha l'yoyim ha'achrina. Says the Gemara, umikol makoim kois be'inon. We require that you mekadesh and you say Shechianu over a cup of wine on the first day of Yom Tov, and on Chala Moyed we don't use wine. And you don't have, and you like have more than that. Since we drive on Chalamoid, you got to take your kids to a Chalamoid trip. We don't want you drinking on Chalamoid. The wife is doing the drive. Later, Messiah, later of Nachman. So we say that this is referring to the Shechianu, that which we interpret as a Shechianu, supports Rav Nachman. The Omer Rav Nachman, Zaman Omer Afilu B'Shuk. You can say the Zman even in the marketplace. That means if you took your kids up to Disneyland, Disney World, and then you realize you forgot to say Shechianu on the first day of Yom Tov, right there, right in front of the castle, you can say Shechianu. The I mean in kois, because if you say you require kois called Yomi is there a cup available every day? So said the Gemara, no. Dilma the ikli like kois. No, we're talking about America, where there's always wine, right? There's always wine. You belong to Boca Grove. You got to spend your $2,500. How do you spend your $2,500? You buy cases of wine. That's what we do. We buy cases of wine. They overcharge you terribly, right? You know you have to spend $2,500.
Right over there.
Yeah, kosher wine. There's a whole kosher wine list. But don't look at the price. You just buy it and you have it over there. Boom. Yeah, some of it is Zayah.
Get it cheaper with
Well, we don't
with
get daddy, but you got to spend the money. Since you got to spend $2,500, that's what everybody does. That's not the idea of persuasion. Yeah, no, you have to give it. The Saba Rabbi Yehuda, how do you think? Of course, because how else do you spend the $2,500? How many times can you go to the barbecue? The wine. You can blow it and not get for Yom Tov. This Yom Tov and for Pesach, you'll be done completely. Yeah, you have a good list. You'll see the list. You have throwing wine and you have good wine. Go, you got it. It's got good wine. And don't look at the price because you don't care because you got to spend the money anyway. And then you go do what? You can cry and spend the money anyway. But Rabbi Yehuda, Shmini Tuinlina, but there's Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda, Shmini Tuinlina, but does Rabbi Yehuda really hold that the 8th day requires staying overnight? That means not running out of town, but staying in Yerushalayim. But Tanya, we learned Rabbi Yehuda, Minayin lePesach Sheni, Shena Tuinlina. How do I know that Pesach Sheni does not require staying overnight? Just because you brought the carbon Pesach. The Pesach Sheni doesn't require you now to spend an extra night in Iyar over there in Yerushalayim. Shenema, because it says, Upanisa ba'boika v'alachta lo elecha. Right? You may turn back in the morning and go to your tents. And it says, Sheisis yomim toichel matzos. And in the next one it says, for 6 days you shall eat matzos. Mash esha tu'unin shisha tu'unin lina. That which requires an observance of 6 days, what do you call it? Observance of 6. That which requires an observance of 6 days, like the first Pesach, in other words, needs lina, staying overnight in Yerushalayim. What is his rule coming to exclude? That also the 8th day of the Chag, that it's also like an extra, like it's just like Pesach Sheni is extra. Atzeres is also extra. It's only a kosher line with Pridaska. You don't need to stay overnight. So tomorrow, Pesach Sheni de Kabose. It comes to only exclude the second Pesach, which is similar to the first Pesach. Since we're talking about this, it's coming Pesach as Pesach. At the end of the day, Pesach Sheni is given the name Pesach Sheni, which means that it's close to Pesach Rishon. Shmini Atzeres has nothing connecting it to Sukkot, except for the fact that it comes a day later. But that's not a connection, right? So very good. So therefore, the Miyute is only coming for Pesach Sheni itself. To tell us, I would have thought that you don't need it, because the logic would say, why shouldn't I need Lina? Because Pesach Sheni is also eaten. Pesach al matzah sumerayim yachlu. You have to eat the Pesach with matzah and maror. So you're combining the 3 things that make the essence of Pesach, the meat of the carbon Pesach, matzah and maror. You have to eat it by Pesach Sheni. Today, Daddy, what do? We eat matzah on Pesach Sheni, right? It's a minig by us to eat matzah by Sheni. Zeicha to the carbon Pesach. Yeah, it's a zeich, but it's a minig. It's a zeich like not everybody does. It's a Chassidish idea, yeah. But today it's become more prevalent. But the idea behind it, because it's a beautiful minhag. Yeah, right. Chabad is pouring it down to everybody. So, Hochanami Mistabit. It's not because we learned how Bikurim. What is Bikurim? The Bikurim is this week's parsha. To bring it.
Any carbon that you bring, you have to have lina.
Right.
You bring a shlomer,
right,
an oiler, a chatas. You got to stick around.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to stick around overnight.
Yes, you do.
No, the carbon is not allowed to be over the night. You have to eat the meat overnight, but that doesn't mean
So some of them it's 2 nights.
2 nights in a day, but you don't have to stay. The Baal, I don't think the Baal has to stay. I don't think you have to stay.
I think you do.
I think you have to stay until the day closes, until the gates close.
You got to go the next day.
And then I'm not sure. It's Kenzine, I don't know. But the reason why we bring in Bikurim, Daddy, I will tell you. Bikurim is brought b'simcha. When we get to
That's what I
Masechet,
do. You do
right,
it for
and
him.
it was so b'simcha. How do you know that it was brought b'simcha? The Yevonim, when they made the Gezer Shema, one of the things they went out of their way to stop was the bringing of the Bikurim. Why? So the Mashal brings it down. Because it was brought with great simcha. And a mitzvah done with simcha, that's what they wanted to break. They wanted to bring the joy that's in Yiddishkeit. So Bikurim and Sukkis have something in common. They're brought with great ach sameach, with great joy. So Bikurim, I don't know the halacha.
Yeah, that's Sukka.
Yeah, but why? Right.
Exactly
Because you're gathering the crops at that
Right,
time.
and they
You're
brought it,
saving Rabbi Kulim.
and
You
bring in the group. So that too is the other one.
You had good crops,
Right.
so you're happy.
So let's get to it. It's not to buy bikurim to unin carbon. You need a carbon. This year, the carbon is of course the food that you bring, the shlomim that you bring together with the bikurim. Okay, this year, the song that you sang together, which was Arimimcha Hashem Kidilisoni. Okay, this year, Vitanufa, you needed waving, Velino, and you needed waiting overnight, right? We're on 47b2. Man Shamad Leida Amar Tanufa. Now, who's the Tana that says that you need to do waving around as part of the Bikurim? Rebbe Yehuda. It's our Rebbe Yehuda. The Ka'ama Tunin Lina, and you see, he says you need to stay overnight, even though Bikurim is not followed by 6 days of observance. Remember, we said before, where you have by Pesach, where you have a Pesach that goes on for 6 days, that's where you have the Lina. But here you see it by Bikurim, it's a 1-day shot, and you have to be Lina. Says the Gemara Tanya, because we learn of Yehuda, our pasuk, as you said, this week's parsha. V'hinachta, you should place it before Hashem Elokecha Zutanufa. That's waving. Ata oime Zutanufa. You say this means waving. This means actually placing it down on the mizbeach, right, for the Kohanim to take and eat. So when the pasuk says, "And the Kohen shall place it before the mizbeach," or it already talks about putting it down. So the extra word "vihinachtoy" must mean not putting down, because we already have a pasuk that says the word "vihinichoy." So what's "vihinachtoy"? It means "zutanufa." Good. So what do you see? The Gemara has just proved that Yehuda holds that the Mishnah requires waving for Bikurim, and it's Rabbi Yehuda who requires that waving. So therefore, it's only Rabbi Yehuda Mashma that requires that waving. But Dilma Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, maybe this Mishnah is not Rabbi Yehuda, maybe it's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. The Tanya we learned, and the Kohen should take the basket from your hand. The Torah is teaching us about Bikurim that requires waving. David Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, my time of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, how does he see over here waving? Asya yad yad mishlomin. He learns hand from shlomin. Regarding Bikurim, it says in the Kohen shall take the basket from your hand. Regarding the shlomin, Yoda Tivienu as Ishe Hashem, with his own hands, the owner shall bring the fire offering of Hashem. Now here's the problem. The owner cannot bring it. Who brings it actually? The Kohen. Sama kan Kohen. Just over there by Bikurim, the waving is done by the Kohen, because it clearly says, V'lokach HaKohen hatene b'yadecha, and the Kohen shall take the basket in his hands. Is Memela Dam Kain over here, Aplahalad Kohen. Also in the Shlomim, the waving must be done by the Kohen, even though the pasuk only says the owner. Ma'ala Balim. But just like over there, the Shlomim, by the Shlomim, the owner must wave, because the pasuk says the owner must do the waving. Av Karbolim, by Bikurim, the owner must also do the waving. Now, how is that possible if it's supposed to be a Kohen? By Bikurim, it's supposed to be a Kohen, and by it's the Tzaddik. And what do you call? And then what do you call? And by Bikurim it says V'lokach hakoyim atene. And by Shlomim, when we made the Gezerah Shabbat yad, it has to be the koyin. Okay, so how do you do it? Koyin meniach yodai tachis yad bolam u'meinif. The koyin places his hand below the owner's hands and waves it together with him. So in other words, the owner holds it, and the koyin puts his hands underneath it, and it's the koyin does it. Yeah, but what he does, no, but so that's he touches. I think he touches both. I think he touches partly the bread and partly touches the owner, but it's the koyin from here that's mashma that does the actual movement. The bow touches what the koyin does. My Havdalah, what is the ultimate decision regarding Shechiyanu and Shmini Atzeres Chag Hazeh? What is it that we today are supposed to be doing? After having driven us crazy for a daf and a half, let's get to it. Rav Nachman Oimrim, what's the ultimate halacha regarding Shmini Atzeres and Shechiyanu? Shechiyanu, and of course Shmini Atzeres and Chag Hazeh. Rav Nachman Oimrim Zaman b'Shmini Shel Chag. Rav Nachman says, and we're on 47b3. You do say Zaman on the 8th day of very basic, but of Sheshis Omar. Ein oimrim zaman b'shmini shel chag. Sheshes says you don't say Shechiyanu. V'hilchasa and al oimrim zaman shmini shel chag. And the halacha is that we do say Shechiyanu on shmini shel chag. Tane kabos to Rav Nachman, and we've got a brayso that learns of Rav Nachman. Shemini, and now we're on today's daf. Regel bifnei atzmoi. It's a regel bifnei atzmoi. Okay, look at Tosfos. The aim, what does it mean? Regel b'fnei atzmai. The aim yoish from b'sukkah, that we don't sit in the sukkah. Carbon la atzmai, it has its own carbon. She'ena b'seida priachag, doesn't have the imkain. Havilei shisha parim bracha la atzmai. Like you said, otherwise you should bring 6, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 on Shmini Atzeres and 6. You don't do that, right? As it was Shmini, then bracha la atzmai. It's Yom Shmini Chag Atzeres says that. Tosfos said the words, it's Yom Shmini Chag Atzeres, says it, like the Ashkenazim do, the Yekis. We say Shmini Atzeres Chag Hazeh, which is not Lashon. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, the Yekis say it's Yom Shmini Chag Atzeres, which is the Lashon of Tosfos. We say Shmini Atzeres Chag Hazeh. You say like Tosfos, it's Yom Shmini Chag Hazeh. So because now you know where you're getting it from. So ubetoisefta mashim bebaruches hamelech the kahai gavna baruch la'atzma v'yayim hashmini v'yayim shmini chag atzeres.
You look at a silver.
I read that now, but let's no. It still says the regular nusach svad benching say shmini atzeres chag atzeres, and the Ashkenazim say it the other way. So, anyways, and maybe the Sfadim say it the other way. I can't say. Anyways, the kids. So let's now. The Indian Parza Kishav. What are we talking about? The pay is Payis Bifnei Atzmai. That means Shmini Atzeres. While the rest of Sukkos, all 24 of the Mashmaris, got to do some of the Avodah. On Shmini, because you had 70 Kavanas, everybody can get a turn. But on Shmini Atzeres, they used a lottery. It had a lottery. Zaman Bifnei Atzmai, it gets its own Shechiyanu. Regel b'fnei atzmai, it's its own yontif. That means one does not dwell in a sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. That's what Rashi says. Regel b'fnei atzmai she'ein yoishvim b'sukkah. So the only reason why we would stay in a sukkah on Shmini Atzeres because of the diaspora, because we're in Golus and we have a suffix. Carbon b'fnei atzmai, it only has one carbon, not 6. Shira b'fnei atzmai lamanetzeich al shminis liyotzav. Bracha b'fnei atzmai shmini atzeres hachag hazeh, or lashon is Yom Shmini Chag Hatzeres Hazeh. Baruch Hashem, we made it to the Mishnah. Very good, Baruch Hashem.